Friends, welcome into another edition of Soccer Texas. I'm Alex Parra, and today talking soccer, talking Houston, talking World Cup with a very special guest. You can see him on screen right now. We welcome in Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner, Mr. Adrian Garcia. First of all, Adrian, thank you for being with us. Welcome in. How are you?
I am doing great, Alex. Good to see you. Good to be with you on your show, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with your audience.
Well, Adrian, we go way back, and I guess we could spend a whole hour at least discussing our ties. I consider you a friend, and before we get into the subject matter, thank you. We also thank you for your service to our community for years and years. And one day, ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at either the mayor of Houston or much, much more. Trust me, it's going to happen, Adrian. Adrian, let's talk a little bit about sports. Obviously, we focus here on Deportes Nation and Soccer Texas on the world of sports and soccer in particular. But there's an entity that's really important to all the sports, not only soccer, not only the World Cup, but every sport in town, and that's the Harris County Houston Sports Authority. There were some major announcements here in the last couple of days regarding its leadership, regarding, I guess, more than anything, its mandate. But can you tell us a little bit about the history of this? This is an entity, as Mayor Whitmire was saying, that many young people had no idea existed or what its mandate was all about.
That's true. In fact, he was the state senator that helped to carry the legislation that ultimately created the Sports Authority. So that legislation was created back in the 70s, in the late 70s. And it was intended primarily to be the vehicle by which bonds would be passed to help facilitate the investment into our respective sports venues, whether it be Minute Maid. Well, back then, you know, the main show was the
Astrodome, right?
The NRG Stadium.
Okay.
Yeah, the Astrodome. Yeah, and well, no, NRG hadn't come to fruition, but it was the Astrodome. And then they were looking at the baseball stadium, and then we started to think a little broader in terms of ultimately bringing soccer to Houston. But it's actually a vehicle that was intended to have a financial focus. However, over the years, it morphed into becoming a marketing apparatus for various events. Now, the other people may not realize is that there is actually two entities in Harris County. One is the Harris County Houston Sports Authority, and the other one is the Harris County Sports Corporation. And so the Sports Corporation is focused on the NRG Park, and it's focused on doing almost a little bit of the same, but more in terms of the management and the upkeep of now the Astrodome, NRG, the convention center that is on NRG at the NRG Park, the Astro Arena. And so over the years, those two entities began to conflict, if you will. And so part of what you're hearing as of late is the opportunity to refocus the Sports Authority into its original mission, and then create a more synchronized relationship with the Sports Corporation.
When we talk about the importance of this entity, it serves there also, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian, as a funding mechanism, not only for the building, but for the maintaining and upgrading, if you will, of all of these stadiums, whether it be Shell Energy Stadium for the Dynamo Dash, Minute Maid Park for the Astros, NRG, like you mentioned, for the Texans, and of course, Toyota Center for the Rockets. That means that there's obviously a relationship with the ownership of these franchises.
Yeah, there is, obviously, because they're tenants. And so you got to have a relationship with them. And the Sports Corporation has a very strong relationship with both the Houston Texans and the Houston Rodeo, who are the primary tenants of the NRG Park. But you got to have a relationship with your tenants. You got to understand what their challenges are, and you've got to maximize their opportunities. And I think what you're seeing as of late with the conversation of the World Cup is that we're doing that. We've had already two Super Bowls. We've had a host of World Series events thanks to the Houston Astros. We've had championships by the Houston Dynamo, and now we're about to have the premier event in the world come to Houston, Texas. And one of the things, Alex, I don't know if you're familiar with it, is the economic impact that the World Cup can have on Houston, Harris County, is that we get excited when we have a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
The economic impact obviously is very strong, a few $billions. The World Cup is equivalent to 5 to 7 Super Bowls.
Wow.
That's big. That's big.
Absolutely, it's big. And Adrian, I guess what can you share with us about the recent change in leadership? I know that everything runs its course, for good or bad. Often elections decide things for us, and we'll talk a little bit about voting and the importance of voting in a little while. But what can you share with us about the change in leadership at the Harris County Houston Sports Authority? You, alongside the mayor, talked about the need for this change, especially with the clock ticking up against what you just mentioned, the World Cup.
Exactly. And first, let me just say that we're very grateful for the many years that Janice Burke was the CEO of the Sports Authority, and she had done a phenomenal job. However, as I mentioned, the World Cup is the premier event, only comparable to being able to host an Olympics event.
Yep.
In your community. And so we got to get this right. And so this was an opportunity to bring in a fresh perspective. We have named Chris Canetti as the interim to the Sports Authority, and now we'll be announcing the chairman in the very near future. I already know who that's going to be, or at least who I'll be supporting. And the reality of all this is, Alex, is that as I mentioned, the economic impact, the long-term residual that Houston Harris County could benefit from, simply said, as I was using the comparison to the Super Bowl audiences are measured in the millions.
Yes, sir.
World Cup audiences are measured in the billions.
Wow.
And so we have an opportunity to attract businesses. We have an opportunity to attract new residents. We have the opportunity to show that we can do the World Cup right and big and strong, and make it an exciting event for everybody, and as a consequence, put us back in line for subsequent World Cups. And that's the goal here. So we need to make sure that we have a fresh perspective on this. And as you said, Alex, you're absolutely correct. The clock is ticking. When the World Cup was announced, we should have been working that very day to make sure all the things in front of us, whether it's facility maintenance, whether it is transportation, infrastructure that needs to be provided to benefit the number of people that are going to be coming, all those things should have started when the World Cup was first announced. So we need to get this right. And so this is no disrespect to the outgoing CEO. There's just too much on the line that we cannot risk not having someone who understands soccer, understands the World Cup, and understands what it means to Houston Harris County in the long term.
Adrian, thank you for that. And look, I don't want to dwell on the past or the negative. I think anything can be reset, should be reset and worked on. Maybe the question is, rather, where did the focus get lost? The question is, what are the expectations now? And you mentioned Mr. Chris Canetti. If anyone knows soccer and the world of soccer, is Mr. Chris Canetti, former president of the Dynamo Dash. He's got experience in the MLS. He's been heading up the World Cup committee. So he certainly knows that. And I was speaking to a good friend of mine, Mr. Enrique Vasquez, about how the focus in our city now is soccer and the World Cup. Adrian, I grew up in the city in the late 80s, early 90s, where really soccer wasn't even talked about. It was this Latino thing
That's right.
that was done in the Latino neighborhoods and parks, but it's become mainstream in many ways because of what you spoke of, Adrian, because of its economic importance, its high profile, and what it is relative to the world. I'm glad we in our community recognize that. Again, not talking about the past, but what are the expectations now of what we can do? I know that Mayor Whitmire seemed, from my perspective, it was an urgency. We've got less than 2 years, Adrian, so a lot's got to come together quickly, but that also doesn't mean down to one person necessarily, does it? It's a community effort.
No, it comes down to leadership. Now, at the end of the day, the mayor had more insight to the issues and circumstances that raise concern about staying the course. And so once we dove into some of those details, absolutely the concern became mutual. And so, and look, I take a lot of pride, Alex, that I traveled to Mexico City with Oliver Luck, then the CEO to the Houston Sports Authority,
right,
to try to get Club America to invest and become our local franchise. It didn't work out. Their appetite was pretty big,
right,
and then as a consequence, we were able to bring in the San Jose Earthquakes.
Yep.
And then the rest is history.
Yep.
So I've got a lot of personal investment in seeing our presence for the World Cup become, what we believe it can be. And back then, Alex, when we hosted the U.S. Mexico exhibition World Cup, I was in the NRG Stadium. I was protecting the World Cup trophy.
Wow.
And I have never felt the kind of energy that I felt in that stadium that day. In fact, I made the joke to someone standing next to me that when the stadium starts to crumble because of all of the energy and the excitement, I'm going to grab the trophy and I'm going to run. It's up to you whether you want to follow me. But that's exactly what we began to talk about. And that was in 2003. We began to talk about the fact that this game will prove to Houston, Harris County residents that soccer is bigger than the Latino community, and it could potentially bring the World Cup attention to Houston, Harris County. And we're accomplishing that. Now the goal is to make sure that we maximize the opportunity that we've been given.
Sure.
And put ourselves back in line.
Y rápidamente, Adrián, sabemos que con menos de 2 años para que llegue el Mundial, la Copa Mundial, no solamente a Estados Unidos, Canadá y México, pero en particular a nuestro estado y específicamente a nuestra ciudad de Houston, sabemos que es algo inmenso, algo muy importante, Adrián. Tú nos has ayudado, has sido un líder en todo este proceso por años. Primero, ¿cómo ves la importancia de este evento y lo que significa para nuestra comunidad?
Pues Alex, gracias por la oportunidad de compartir y conversar a través de la Copa Mundial. Y nomás, la mera verdad, algunas veces me tengo que piscar porque no puedo creer que estamos hablando que la Copa Mundial va a venir a Houston y al condado de Harris. Es una grande oportunidad y entonces, y sin embargo, ahorita estuvimos hablando que en el 2003, antes que llegué a ser concejal de la ciudad de Houston, yo estaba cuidando la Copa, el trofeo de la Copa Mundial, un trofeo de oro.
Sí.
Y porque los Estados Unidos y México estaban jugando en un juego de exhibición en el estadio NRG. Entonces, la conversación en ese tiempo era, este juego va a convencer a todo el mundo aquí en nuestra región que el soccer, el fútbol, es más grande de solamente la comunidad latina. Sí. Pero y que posiblemente puede traer la Copa Mundial aquí. Ahora lo estamos cumpliendo eso en menos de 20 años. Entonces, tenemos que agarrar la oportunidad, tenemos que aprovechar y asegurar que podemos mostrarle a todo el mundo que la Copa Mundial debe de regresar al condado de Harris y a la ciudad de Houston. Entonces, esta es una gran oportunidad de Alex, y sé que ha habido un poco de noticias de cómo se está manejando el grupo de la autoridad de equipos aquí de la ciudad de Houston, pero la mera verdad, tenemos mucho a riesgo y no podemos faltar en ningún aspecto, porque si no, vamos a tener un mal imagen, y eso no puede ser, porque cuando hablas de el fútbol americano,
Sí.
las audiencias de ellos son en los millones, pero la audiencia de fútbol y la Copa Mundial se llega a medir en los billones. Entonces, tenemos mucho riesgo, tenemos que hacerlo bien, y tenemos que hacerlo como el condado de Harris y la ciudad de Houston lo puede hacer, y eso es grande.
Con nosotros aquí en Soccer, Texas, lo pueden ver el señor Adrian Garcia, comisionado del Precinct 2 del condado de Harris. Estamos hablando sobre ya menos de 2 años de que llegue el Mundial a nuestra ciudad. Parte de todo esto, Adrián, y tú y yo lo hemos vivido. Yo me acuerdo del Mundial de 94, si no me equivoco, en Estados Unidos. Fui a Dallas. Y luego también me acuerdo de que más allá de los juegos que se van a realizar aquí en Houston, más allá de ese impacto económico, ¿qué debe de ser el legado que se deja aquí para nuestra comunidad? Y sé que has platicado mucho del fútbol juvenil, que muchos niños no tienen la oportunidad de participar en el fútbol. ¿Esto es parte del plan que tiene el condado y la ciudad para dejar un legado positivo después de que se realice el Mundial aquí en Houston?
De acuerdo, Alex. Y mira, una de las cosas que a mí, yo creo que a ambos nos da mucho orgullo, es que fue nuestra comunidad que presentó el fútbol, el soccer, a la ciudad de Houston, al lado de Harris.
Sí.
Este es el legado de la comunidad latina. Pero sabemos que el fútbol, el soccer, es mundial.
Sí.
Y eso es algo que el fútbol americano no tiene. Eso es algo que el béisbol, más o menos,
Ahí va.
pero más que nada es el fútbol, que es un deportivo mundial. Entonces, esto es algo que es muy grande, y como yo lo veo, no solamente como la Copa Mundial y obviamente siendo un fanático de fútbol, pero podemos traer nuevos residentes, podemos presentar una cara de la bienvenida, de oportunidad, de diversidad que tenemos aquí a otras partes del mundo, y posiblemente traer negocios, más empleo para todo el mundo. Entonces, y nuevos residentes igualmente. Entonces, tenemos una grande oportunidad, Alex, y yo quiero asegurar y poner mi granito de arena, como se dice, para asegurar que lo vamos a hacer bien, lo vamos a hacer grande, y vamos a tener mucho, mucho éxito en ser huéspedes de esta Copa Mundial.
Adrian, we've talked about the importance of an event like the World Cup and the legacy we also want to leave behind, beyond the infrastructure, beyond the economic impact that is coming. And it's actually starting to build in many ways. How do people get involved? And what I mean is this actually trickles down to everyone. And I believe in a positive way, in a negative way. When you talk about traffic, we'll have more traffic. and I know the county and the city and the state are working on those things. But not everyone will fit into the stadium to watch the matches. That's just reality. Especially once we start thinking about the resale market for tickets, right? But we can still all come together. And I think that's maybe, and I don't pretend to know this, when you sit down with other leaders, you talk about how this can help everybody. Help us understand, us common people, if you will, how does it affect us? How can it affect us? And also, how can we be part of this? I love the sport. I love our city and our county, but many people maybe haven't been here but 2 or 3 or 4 years, and they're looking at it from maybe a different lens.
So, first of all, for the person who's not necessarily in the arena, for lack of better words,
Yeah.
just know that you will be hosting residents and visitors from around the world.
Mhm.
And that should be something that we should all take a great deal of pride in, to be able to be willing and excited to show off our city, our county in the best possible way, just as a resident of the area. But if you happen to own a business, like a restaurant, a bar, a nightclub, a t-shirt business, a swag business, a podcast, a Zoom show like this, Alex, I have all the confidence that you're going to end up having some of the players, some of the coaches from all over the world having a conversation about what happened to in their game,
Sure.
what do they think they'll do next year, and all that. It's going to create so much residual, because all the people, I've never been to a World Cup, but all the people and friends I have that have been, first they tell me they never go uh, with prepaid tickets. They always show up. Sometimes they've been successful to get tickets and get into to see the game. Other times they said, "I we've just been in restaurants or in hotels and have watched the games from there, and it's been just as exciting and just as memorable." So the impact of this goes beyond the game itself. I think people will build relationships with people they've met from around the world, and those relationships will become strong friendships, potential business partners, but absolutely will become a very, very beautiful memory because we were able to host the World Cup here. So I think it has a lot of residual, and it's such a huge opportunity. And look, Alex, having been in the police department for 23 years and then on city council, but going back to my years on HPD, I remember being in conversations or watching conversations at City Hall. I wasn't a political back then. I was just a beat cop, but very curious, very interested. And we were talking about how we competed for an Olympic event, didn't succeed,
Mhm.
and why we didn't succeed. Over the years, Houston has made a commitment. And now with the members that you have on Harris County Commissioner's Court, who now understands and appreciates what the World Cup means for us, we now have, we over the years, we've built all the infrastructure up, the stadiums, the hotels, the transportation. We've made huge investments in that so that we could put a package like this and FIFA would say, there's an opportunity there. We should look to them. But it's also been a realization that we're not just one-dimensional sports anymore. We're not just baseball and football or basketball, but we have so much more to bring. We're talking about cricket these days.
Wow.
So, I mean, so we may be hosting a cricket championship one day. But this is what the World Cup means to me. It opens up so many more doors, and it creates so much more benefits for people. If you're a Airbnb participant, you're going to be making a lot of money come the World Cup.
If you drive an Uber, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
I
So it's just got so many residuals.
Adrian, I know that certain decisions often take courage. And what I mean by that is forgetting maybe about our party affiliation and focusing on the greater good, focusing on what's important to our community. I sense that in the Harris County Houston Sports Authority, we are working together with each other, keeping the community as the priority, not necessarily our partisan politics. I think you've always worked like that.
Absolutely, Alex. And look, the way I try to govern the work that I do as an elected official is that I look for what matters most to most. And so I like to stay in the middle. I like to work with both sides, because when you work with both sides and you can find common ground, then your work, your output is a lot better for the future of all of us. So regardless of party, And especially when it comes down to sports. And it's just like when I was a sheriff. I was protecting everybody, not just those that voted for me. And so in sports, you got fans on both sides of the spectrum.
Sure.
And so you've got to make sure that your sporting events are strong and solid and that they're well designed and well led. And so I'm excited about what's in front of us, Alex. And I know the rest of our region is, because they're going to field this incredible event coming to our community.
Adrian, before we let you go, and I'd like to maybe your take in English first on the importance of what's coming up here literally in less than 2.5 weeks, which are elections. It's in November, it's a presidential election, and we can each talk about what's important and priority to us. I tell people at the end of the day, please participate in the process, meaning it's probably too late to register to vote, but certainly participate, vote, get educated, and then participate. There are so many people that complain, so many people that get upset, but haven't voted or don't even take the time to vote. Your message, sir, as someone who lives it, I'm sure you're always in a perpetual state of running for what's next, I imagine, and it must be stressful. But what message do you have to our community about voting, about participating in the process?
You know, Alex, nothing is more exciting for me than when I am given the opportunity to go speak to new United States citizens, those that become naturalized and become a part of the fabric of our nation. And the reason that's exciting for me is because, look, I'm the only American born in my family. My parents and my brothers and my sister are all immigrants from Mexico. They all had to go through that naturalization process. So every time I get invited to go speak to that group, which is generally in the 3,000 to 5,000 audience range, I see my family in those pews. And what I say to them is that, you know, you've worked incredibly hard to get to this point. Now, to not take it to the next level is really wasting all of that effort and all of that work. When you vote, you make this country better, regardless of who you might vote for, regardless if I agree or disagree with you. The reality is we must participate in the political process. It's where the decisions that matter most to most are made. It's where we make decisions that we may not see it today, but are going to impact generations down the line. And so it is critical that we participate. The one thing, the one right that is critical to creating success, strengthening this country, and making sure that you have the leadership that listens to you, that reacts to you, and does what it can for the betterment of us all. And so that's the political process. And so come, early voting begins tomorrow, Monday. And so I'm going to vote early because you never know what might happen. In fact, on Thursday, I'll be jumping out of an airplane with the United States Army.
Wow.
And so,
I want video of that, Adrian.
There probably will be. And so I don't want something to happen. My plan to be to vote on election day, something happens with my parachute.
You're going to be fine.
I'm going to vote tomorrow. And I encourage everyone to make a plan. Take your friends, your family, take your children, or children take your parents to go out and vote and make sure that your voice is heard.
That's a huge and amazing and important message. Adrián, antes de cerrar el día de hoy, y las gracias por tu tiempo, por tu conocimiento, por tus consejos. ¿Qué comentarios tienes para nuestra comunidad referente al voto? Es tan importante participar. Hay mucha gente que se queja del proceso, se quejan de nuestros líderes, y tú lo vives todos los días, me imagino. Pero si uno no participa, teniendo la habilidad de hacerlo, creo que se está defraudando y no está apoyando a nuestra comunidad. Platícanos sobre la importancia del voto y la participación en nuestro proceso electoral.
Pues Alex, como es dicho, esto es algo importante. Y la mera verdad, como estaba comentando, yo soy el único nacido en este país de mi familia. Mis padres, mis hermanos, mi hermana, todos inmigrantes de México. Entonces, cuando yo tengo la oportunidad de darle la bienvenida
a nuevos ciudadanos a este país cuando llegan a pasar por el proceso de ser naturalizados como ciudadanos de los Estados Unidos, me da mucho orgullo porque toda mi familia tuvo que pasar por ese proceso de ser naturalizado para ser ciudadano de este país. Entonces, yo veo a mi familia en esos asientos y el mensaje que yo les doy es que, mira, has trabajado duro para llegar a este punto. Ahora la obligación de ser ciudadano es de votar. Sí. Aunque estamos de acuerdo por quién votas, no importa. Aunque a lo mejor yo voy a votar por alguien distinto, no importa. Pero para participar, eso es crítico porque estamos haciendo decisiones no solamente para hoy o para mañana, pero estamos haciendo decisiones para generaciones que vienen después de nosotros. Entonces, es importante de estar seguro que estamos eligiendo las personas que nos van a escuchar, nos van a representar, van a trabajar duro para el bien de todos. No importa si votamos por ellos o no, espero que estamos eligiendo personas que trabajen para todos.
That's one of the reasons I love having this gentleman on any of our shows, because he knows not only about sports, not only about soccer, but also about something really important, which is voting in our community. Adrian, before we let you go, thank you. Gracias for being with us. What's next for you, sir? I believe you're not on the ballot here, are you, in November?
No, I'm not on the ballot. I am actually campaigning for a non-person initiative, and it is the maintenance program for the Harris County Flood Control District. This is a ballot initiative that the voters will have a decision to make. And so I'm asking for you to look at it, consider it, and please think about supporting it, because it's what we need to keep up with our infrastructure that helps to keep us safe from floods. And so we need those resources. So I'll be working on behalf of that, but I also will be casting my vote as a citizen of this great community.
Adrian, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for your time. I hope you're not a stranger. I know with the World Cup less than 2 years away, we'll be talking more about its impact, about what's going on with the Harris County Houston Sports Authority, about the stadiums, about all of this. So we're excited, and we can't thank you enough. But thank you for your time today. Have a great rest of your day, and be careful on that airplane thing.
Right? Thank you, Alex. Good to see you, my friend, and keep up the good work. Proud of you.
Likewise. Thank you, Adrian. Take care.
Take care.